Before the First World War, archaeologists are digging practice ditches at Hill 80 near Witter, Belgium. This is a place where fighting was very bad. During the war, the land on Messines Ridge changed hands 4 times. Archaeologists carefully dig into the ground and find a well-preserved site from World War I. It is sad proof of how cruel the war was. Hey everyone! In this movie, we go on an amazing trip to the historic Flanders Fields, where archaeologists dug deep into the ground and found something so scary that it would give them chills. But before we start, make sure you subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to get updates every week. Now let's begin. The Germans kicked out the British and French troops from after World War I. The Germans took the Messines Ridge, a key peak that gave them control over the farmlands in Flanders that were nearby. Over time, the sites around Widget were covered with dirt, which erased what happened at Hill 80 from 1914 to 1918. After almost 100 years, builders bought land near Widget to put up new homes on Hill 80. Laws about building and history in Belgium went into effect. Before they build, developers have to do archaeological studies. In 2015, they hired Simon Vertigem to do a baseline study of Hill 80. The results shocked them. When they dug short trenches to find out what was under the Flanders turf, they found a major German defense position from World War I on top of Hill 80. The system of trenches and bunkers looked surprisingly well kept for being so old. Vertigem wanted this site to be fully explored, but the developers were only willing to spend a small amount on archaeology. This meant that any money spent on archaeology would be wasted. Britons who were famous backed Cunning Verdigris, a well-known TV historian named Dan Snow, and a famous comedian with a history degree from Oxford University, both backed the plea. Over $200,000 were raised, which was more than the goal of $100,000 set by the request. Almost 3,000 people have donated to the cause. The job began in April 2018, and Hill 80 was kept safe. The first attempt to use crowdsourcing to raise money for an archaeology project was successful. Along the Messenger Bridge, the British and French built defenses. On October 20, 1914, the Germans struck, which changed everything. The Germans took over the Messines Ridge, including Haladi at Widget, after a few days of tough fighting. On October 31, the 1st London Scottish Regiment came and took down most of the British defenses around Widget, which they called White Sheet. The 4th Cavalry Brigade was holding the line around Widget, and the Scottish were sent to help them. The Scots set up camp on top of the hill, where they were under heavy fire. Through the night, the Germans attacked many times, but they held out until they were finally pushed back after close fighting that killed and hurt about 400. As of now, the Germans controlled the strategic heights of Messines Ridge at Widget. These heights gave them a clear view of the enemy lines. The first step in getting the Widget back was a complicated mining job in which sappers dug trenches 100 feet below the surface through the clay of Flanders to reach the German defenses. There were different levels of water. Once the 3-mile tunnels were finished, workers from Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and Britain worked underground. Guns fired at the German lines on May 21, 1917, before the British infantry invasion on June 7, 1917. He wrote in 1921 that the Germans were hit by 300 heavy artillery and 2,000 guns. Neville Lytton, a press officer and general staff member, quoted a leader of the Messines offensive. He was seen by General Sir Charles Harrington. We'll switch places. He was talking about bombs made in Germany. 20 minutes after the artillery attack, at 3:10 a.m., 19 huge mines were set off by engineers. The blast that destroyed the hilltop was heard in Lloyd George's home in London. It could be heard in Dublin, where mines killed 10,000 Germans. Infantrymen from Britain and the colonies charged the German defenders, who were stunned. More artillery shells and poison gas projectiles hit the German positions in front of them. The artillery bombardment that came before the infantry attack did a lot of damage to the fortified German position at Witter, which was near the middle of the line of attack. This meant that the Irish soldiers from a couple of 16th Division battalions had to take the town. Soon they were able to break through what little the Germans had left of their barriers. The Western Front is about bad leadership and attacks that don't work and don't win much ground. The attack on Messines Ridge worked. The operation's goals were met in about half a day. The Messines Ridge was secured, and the German troops that had been there for almost 3 years were turned away from its commanding heights. The battle wasn't over yet, though, and the Germans launched a counterattack the next day after the British took the Messines Ridge. In April 1918, during the German Army's Big Spring Offensive, they went back to Wedge about a year later and took control of the village again. The village was finally taken back by the British in September, with help from American troops. The end of World War I was only a few weeks away. Hill 80 has been called the Pompeii of the First World War because of how special it is and how well the buried artifacts have been preserved. Because the site, which is almost 3 acres, has changed hands so many times, the researchers found a complicated network of trenches. Many parts of the area hadn't been plowed since the end of World War I in 1918, which is a big reason for the site's exceptional level of protection. When the Germans took it over, the fact that French small guns were there was the strongest proof of this. Other items were found in the Flanders clay when the researchers dug deeply enough. Vertigem wrote that in every excavation campaign, you know it could happen, but every time it does, it knocks you off your feet for a few seconds. Then you get back to work and make sure you do it right, because every detail counts. The archaeologist talked about why it was so important to carefully describe everything that was found during the dig. It seems like the more knowledge you get, the more bodies you'd find. After more than 100 years, on October 10, 2019, these were found in 430 shell holes and 1,800 feet of ditches. They died in the mud in Flanders, and some of them were buried with a full military service at 11 a.m. The last coffin, which was lowered into the graves after World War I, held the few bones of 11 British and Commonwealth soldiers. After the British were buried, 73 Germans were buried, among them Private Albert Errol, who was 17 years old. Simon Vertigem told The Guardian that some of the bones that were found were just lying around. While Pompeii isn't the same, it had something to do with finding glasses, wedding rings, bags, and rosary beads. That's all for today. What do you believe about this amazing find? Please tell us in the comments. Kindly share and like our movies. Always remember to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to get new videos every day.